What I think is interesting here is, I mean, why Kanye West? It's just like there's so many artists who I feel like, we can talk about Jay-Z, you can talk about Beyonce, but it's almost like they're almost too tame to really make an impact, whereas like most people I think would kind of err on the side that like, oh, you know, like pick Jay-Z as like the black ambassador of hip-hop because he, you know, he has this like rags to riches story. Brianna, like you and I were talking about earlier, he's kind of like, you know, it's not typical, but kind of just like it's a feel-good story, but really where's the heart and like where's the context of it? Whereas Kanye West, he's been doing, you know, these actions like where he accused George Bush about Hurricane Katrina incidences and stuff like that, and then also, you know, with his interruption of Taylor Swift to the VMAs a couple years ago, proclaiming that Beyonce probably should have won, and I think that's almost where Kanye's kind of the interesting person to focus on here in the societies, because he's the one that's not just, you know, taking pictures with, you know, Barack Obama and Michelle Obama, you know, Jay-Z and Beyonce, but he's actually out there and he's putting himself out on a limb, you know, whether it's intentional or not, I mean, that kind of remains to be seen. Personally, I don't really think it is intentional, but, you know, I guess some people would interpret that differently, and really only Kanye knows. I spoke with the writer of this article. You got Kanye, Professor David J. Leonard, Washington State University, and he said it's not really important if Kanye knows what he's doing, but the rhetoric that he's like bringing to the table and the issues that he's talking about are really in the context of a much larger history. I mean, so I would put the question is, you know, in thinking about what, regardless of what he's intending to do or not, is what he's doing relevant? Is he doing relevant things? Is this worth people taking the time to look at him and say, this man can almost be a focal point for discussions to come about black men, black women, not just in hip-hop, but also in political America, and just the general society of America?
I mean, I would say yes. I think because, okay, topic of race, for example. Nobody likes to sit down and really talk about, you know, white privilege this, or black people are oppressed this, or Mexicans are seen as this. And I think that what Kanye does, you know, whether it's intentional or not, like from his point of view, the things that he says, like, spark conversation, you know, because he said, like, George Bush doesn't care about black people. I mean, that sparked a conversation, like, you know, do we, you know, perceive minorities in the country in a different light, you know, because, like, something he talks about was, it took 5 days, like, for there to be relief sent to Hurricane Katrina, and if it would have, you know, happened in a nice white neighborhood, like, you know, they would have been sent there immediately, and like how things are, if the black people were searching for food, it was seen as looting, whereas other people were, you know, looking for food, and it was like, oh, yeah, they're hungry, they're looking for food, you know,
right.
And I think that because he said that, you know, of course it caused a lot of negative attention to him, but it also, you know, from a philosophical standpoint, you know, it did spark a
It got a conversation going,
yeah.
Regardless of what he did about it. I mean, I guess, not to digress too much, but just taking it a step farther, I mean, George Bush isn't necessarily directly in charge of getting that aid there. So, I mean, do you think it's fair to say that, like, Kanye is just looking at, like, you know, the head of the snake, the President of the United States, and it doesn't matter who's below that, it's him that needs to take care of that? I mean, is it fair to say that Kanye knew that, you know, George Bush himself, maybe not, was not personally sending, you know, aid down there, but that by going after that figurehead, I mean, he's not accusing the director of FEMA, you know, of having poor aid coming. He's accusing the President of the United States, which is huge. And I mean, would it be fair to say that by going after the President of the United States with a comment like that, it generates almost a bigger effect?
I don't see Kanye as like a conscious speaker or a social commentator. I think he's very much acting out and ill-informed in a lot of regards, but he certainly still is relevant as a source of study because he is talked about so much more than other people. But at the same time, I think it's really, really hard to argue that he knows the impact of what he's saying at the time that he's saying it.
I think in a way he just kind of says something not knowing, but then once people start backing him up, they kind of move what he was thinking, like his point and what he was trying to portray, come out, and they're like, well, he means this, 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 and then he's like, yeah, and then he puts them all together, he's like, I did mean this, and so this is exactly what I was trying to say, but he does it in a way that's, he's not conscious of what he's just going to say it, but then other people will change what he's saying into what people think or want to hear. And then by like going after the president, that caused more, if he said FEMA or whatever, it's not as big, it's like the president, so he gets more media from it and like more people hear it because it's the president, so everyone's going to talk about it more.
Yeah, and I kind of going on that, just to paraphrase a quote here I got from the op that I thought was really great. Kanye's intent isn't important, so it's going off what you're saying, but it's just the context of a larger history. So I think one of the huge points this article makes is that not just in the music industry, but just in society, there is this constant oppression of black men, and you know we're seeing we have a black president now, we have a black first lady now. There are black senators, black congressmen, that kind of thing. But the need to speak out against certain things in a racially diverse America is almost more necessary. I'm not going to say more necessarily than Martin Luther King or the era of the Civil War, but it's almost more necessary than it's ever been, I think, at least. So it really focuses around the Grammys incident, kind of the infamous VMAs incident.
Well, what I think is kind of what Demi was talking about, the media and how people kind of squish together what he says. I think when Kanye speaks, what it is people turn what he says into what they want to hear.
Almost like they're using Kanye.
Yeah, well, not necessarily that. Like they're taking what they want to hear versus what they need to hear. And I think Kanye is like that inappropriate friend you don't like to bring around your friends because you're like, yo, what the hell is this guy going to say? And you're like, Mom, like you don't say that in front of my mom. Like, and that's what Kanye is, and I think that's like, people don't like that. People don't like that, and I think, because of their uncomfortability with the things that he says, they turn it into, oh, well, maybe he was saying this because they're trying to, people like to avoid what he said because they know what he's saying is true, so they like.
So kind of like with his interruption of Taylor Swift, everybody's saying, oh, he's drunk, he's an asshole, that kind of thing. And they're getting after him, and then everybody kind of takes a step back. A couple days later, he goes, wait a second, even if he didn't totally know what he was doing, it's clearly something that maybe we need to talk about. Obviously it's up to voting and voters and stuff like that, but why is Taylor Swift winning this when so many people thought Beyonce should have won that, or even going to this year's Grammys, the white hip hop artist Macklemore beats Kendrick Lamar for an award, and Macklemore himself is sitting here saying, I didn't deserve this. And I mean, that's almost just pushing the Kanye question, like, that's like looking back a couple years going, Kanye had a point, 3-4 years ago. And now we're kind of moving this. It's still kind of here. We're still talking about Kanye. So
I think that was like my favorite part about the article. Well, is when the author talks about how there's these artists like Justin Timberlake and Macklemore and like Robin Thicke, and how white people like to listen to them because it's creating like like to listen to rap music because it's helping them escape their boring like white suburban lives, and like I'm just like, this is crazy. But but at the same time, it's interesting because, like, he also says, like, that aspect of, black people, it's desired, but they don't want it to be
Again, it's like the friend comment. It's like, you want the message, but you want to dumb it down. It's almost like if a white artist is saying the black message, it's easier to digest.
Yeah, because, they look like you, so you like them, and their music's hot, and it's what you want to hear, so it's just like killing two birds with one stone, pretty much.
So it's almost like Kendrick Lamar's song, Poetic Justice, is, I would say, it's pretty similar to a couple of Macklemore's songs, but maybe Macklemore's song gets the nod because it's easier to accept this, independent, white rapper from Seattle, as opposed to, this like again, the friend that you don't want to bring around kind of a thing.
Another interesting discrepancy in race that this does bring up is whether, what people found so offensive about his outburst at the VMAs, this author attributes partially to his blackness, and it would be interesting to think, well, if it had been a white performer who had been drunk and stormed the stage and created such a scene, would this have blown up as much as it did? very much in this article, the author akins the act as something that would be, even says, expected at the VMAs.
Right.
Even though this hasn't been something that's done before.
I guess for me, I the second I read that, I was just like, no, like that's just rude. You don't do it. You know, like you let the person have their moment. If anything, he embarrassed Beyonce doing this. And then the more I thought about it, and I was just like, you know what? It would be rude. No matter who did it, it would be considered rude. But how would the days following it look like? And it's, you know, Kanye says that he was intoxicated when he did this, right? Or it's, you know, it's been said that he was intoxicated when he did this. Well, you know, part of me, and this is me taking kind of a 180-degree stance to, you know, how I thought about it. You know, imagine a white performer going up there, anybody, any white performer. Yeah, I'm not going to name names, but you know, maybe Miley Cyrus, right? Goes up there, right? And she interrupts Beyonce, you know, and says, you know, Robin Thicke had the best video of the year, something like that, right? Well, you know, it's going to be rude. People are going to blast her on Twitter, on Facebook, on the internet, stuff like that. But it'll probably be over much quicker. Oh, and it would be, oh, she's just drunk, you know, or like, oh, she's just misbehaving because of her childhood, or anything. Or, you know, if a guy did it, maybe, oh, that's he's a rock star. That's what they're supposed to do, right? But it's like, Kanye does it, and the backlash, I mean, we're talking about it right now in 2014. That clearly says it's more significant than Miley Cyrus twerking on stage a couple months ago and just making everybody uncomfortable.
And I think, and you see that. I don't know if you, like, the whole, like, Justin Bieber thing, and then, like, who's the guy that plays with the dreads?
Richard Sherman.
Yeah, and there was that thing, like, you know, graduated, like, they have Richard, Sherman.
Oh, yeah.
Graduated top of his class, seen as a thug, blah, blah, blah. And then you have Justin Bieber, DUI.
Drugs.
Spitting on fans, and he's just a
misguided kid.
Right. And, you know, and I hate to kind of go with, like, the internet trend, that kind of a thing, because, you know, it's not quoting or citing anything, but it is true. I mean, Richard Sherman got lambasted for this, when really he's kind of doing what he's supposed to do, and Justin Bieber is, let's be honest, like, you know, his fans are supporting. I don't think he lost fans for getting a DUI, and like, we could say that's a problem, and you know, it kind of goes to the thing too that, like, you know, a black artist could get a DUI and we wouldn't really care. T.I. was in jail and he still has fans, that kind of thing, you know, for guns, like violence and that kind of thing. But I always also wonder with the Richard Sherman thing, what if it was a white football player that did that? Is there going to be a different reaction?
Well, I mean,
you know, is he not just a thug? Oh, you know, the white football player is just competitive, you know. But Richard Sherman doing that, it's like, here we go. You know, we expect this almost. Yeah. Like, here's the animal almost.
And that makes me think of, you know, when Kanye, his new song, I Am a God, and he says, you know, I am a God, and it has this people outrage. Like, why, how dare he, you know, says that he's, you know, of a higher standard, that he wants to, you know, hold himself to a higher standard of something like, you know, like, I'm successful, I'm this, where people are mad about that, you know, where if he would have been like, I'm a thug or I'm slanging drugs, like, people would have been like, okay, like, that's, you know, that's okay.
Yeah, and not to digress again too much, but going back to your Richard Sherman comment, it's really interesting, it's a black man with the scared white woman again, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's just like, there's that parallel right there, and Erin Andrews said she loved the interview, like, that's what she wanted, that's what she lives for on sideline journalism, but everybody out in the, you know, the interwebs or whatever, is sitting there going, poor Erin Andrews, like, she had to be around that poor girl, poor woman, you know, it's just like, is that our perception? I mean, you mentioned, you know, white football players getting in trouble. Well, when, you know, Pam Oliver gives an interview, they're not, you know, people aren't saying that, you know, that grown white man attacking that poor black woman, you know, that kind of a thing. It's like, there's that interesting dichotomy.
And the word thug now, too, has been used so frequently, and it's all over the place. And I mean, it's almost like a new version of the N-word, and it just, it's so socially acceptable, but it's so wrong. I mean, people call Kanye a thug. It's so rooted in blacks. No one calls, like, rarely hear a white person being called a thug for acting out in any sort of situation. It's something that's very much reserved for people who are black.
But I mean, no matter if, like, kind of what you read, like, you like about race and ethnicity or any type of thing like that, you see that type of how language is, like, connotated, like, with black people, you know, versus white people.
Well, so one of the things in here is that I liked. Actually, I didn't like. I actually really disagreed with it. So he's talking about, you know, you mentioned Justin Timberlake, Macklemore, Adele, Eminem. They are these artists that cultivate their own music. You know, they have all these they have these talents of privilege almost. Singing, songwriting, musicianship. That's a quote from this. And they're kind of imagined as unique to white artists. And, I thought about that, and I was like, that's not true. That's not true at all. I mean, like, you've got John Legend, just a brilliant musician. Beyonce has more Grammys than Taylor Swift will, maybe ever have. And I thought about that, and then I was like, wait, that's kind of really the only couple I can think of at the moment. I mean, there's Ray Charles, that kind of thing, but I could name so many more white artists, and I guess my question to pose to the three of you is, are whites kind of seen, whites, and then obviously, it's not the majority, it's just the majority of white musicians seen as artists, almost, and then black people in the music industry are seen as entertainers.
I think that when it comes to entertainers, it's like for some people, it's like going to the zoo to see like a caged monkey dance, and they're like, and like when they see like rap artists, yeah, like they like it, and they like, listen to, music that's gonna make their ears bleed with the bass and things like that, but like they're not actually like trying to like get like too close because that scares them.
So it's kind of like, if you put your arm in the cage and it gets ripped off, kill the animal, but it was your own fault because that's what you were there to see.
And it's like, oh my god, rap music's terrible and it's responsible for drug music and killing people on the streets and calling women bitches and hoes, and then like, you know what I mean?
It's almost viewed as like a lesser form of art.
A lesser form of art, where, I mean, and, it's kind of the same thing where this, we have this electric dance music craze, EDM. Again, it's predominantly white, and a lot of people are saying it's not music, it's not art, because it's like, oh, it's you pressing buttons, whereas like, I'm not trying to champion this too much, but a lot of work goes into what those guys do. And if you kind of take that parallel and put it into the black artist who's, sampling music, who's writing rhymes, whose beats mean something, well, that's now a different kind of art also, just like Taylor Swift, singing and writing her own songs in this, in the same way as, Kanye West's art is sampling other people's work and creating this kind of new thing.
I mean, you look at two artists operating in the same genre as well. Like Macklemore versus Kanye. Macklemore is considered this highly sophisticated artist who's the champion of gay rights and very articulate and well-spoken and very, very well educated in terms of social commentary. But then people talk about Kanye as this crazy lunatic who happens to make catchy songs. I mean, there's just a total discrepancy between how these two are regarded within the industry.
See, I don't even think it's that. I think, when you listen to people like, your Macklemores, your Justin Timberlakes. I mean, I love Justin Timberlake. Like, but for some people, that's safe. Like, I can listen to this, like, cool. But it's like, you listen to Kanye, and people are like, you listen to him? Like, he's crazy. Like, I feel like there's also a stigma that comes along, like, just, like, with listening to him.
I think, too, it's like the saying, if you're searching for it, you're going to find it. So Macklemore is a white rapper artist, so you're like, oh, his songs are probably better and more positive, and then you find that in that when you're like, Kanye's this crazy guy, and he's rude. Oh, did you hear that line? Like, he's talking about people impaired, like, so you're going to find what you're expecting, and you're going to be biased towards it.
Well, and, again, I'm one of the people that would just say, oh no, we're just being, we're just looking for problems, but when I think about, Professor Leonard, in his chapter here, talks about the Grammys of years past, at least, being kind of a last castle of white music, and now modern days we're talking about, as you mentioned, black music, hip hop, rap, just keeping with that genre. Drugs, calling women bitches, calling women hoes, alcohol, let's make it cool, talk about guns and that kind of thing. Let's go back 40 years. Bruce Springsteen, one of my favorite artists, some of his best songs talking about being drunk, being hungover. Let's talk, about Whitesnake, Leonard Skinner, and Fish. It's talking about, songs they're about being high, being on cocaine, forget the authorities, that kind of thing. It follows the exact same parallel as a lot of black musicians today, but we're looking at them so differently.
Even when you just said that, all I could think about was that what's this country song? It's like honky tonk badonka donk, and
Right.
like you have girls, shaking their asses, slapping their grandmas because that's what the words are. But everyone's like, oh, that's fine.
It's funny.
Like it's a
It's
fun
yeah,
song.
it's funny.
It's catchy. It goes
But
along.
at the same
And you
time,
can listen to it with your family and joke about it.
But if Kanye West does the exact same thing with the same lyrics in a hip hop context, it's how
he's
dare you?
objectifying
How
them.
dare
Those
you.
women are loose and they're probably strippers. Like that's the conversation that's going to come from it. But I think, something he also talked about that I thought was interesting, is this whole like colorblindness, and do we live in like a colorblind nation? Like, when it comes to music and things like that. And in a way, I think that people like to think that racism isn't a thing. Like when they see Macklemore winning over Kendrick Lamar, like, it's not a big deal. Oh, his rap music's good. Like it's fine. Like Kendrick's was like okay. Like I don't think people necessarily, they don't think that there's a problem. And I think that why I like Kanye so much is because like he may not see that he is addressing the problem, but that's why we're having this conversation right now. And first philosophy class I ever took, we saw this quote, and it was George Bernard Shaw, and it said that the reasonable man adapts himself to society, and the unreasonable man adapts society to himself, and all progress relies on the unreasonable man. Kanye like makes you have those types of thoughts, those conversations, those what ifs. Like he stirs the pot, and people may not like the way he's stirring the pot, but it's a he's bringing up.
You have to have it.
Oh yeah, you have to have it, and you might not want to have it, but like he brings up really great things.
So I may think that Andy may think that Warhol has no talent, but just by virtue of talking about him shows his relevancy. Right. Same with Kanye West. I may not think, what he's doing is appropriate, but clearly he's making us have this conversation. So, vis-a-vis, he's, an important person in this conversation.
And I think it's like, regardless of what he says, what are the consequences after? Like he said, George Bush doesn't like black people and he hates black people. And then everyone's like, oh, but then it wasn't, a bunch of people weren't going after George Bush for years later saying he hates black people. They were looking more at the issues around it, like government, and then why did this happen with Katrina. And then there are more efforts to help it. And I think it's, regardless of what he's saying, he is irrelevant in a way, but then what's coming after him isn't, so in a way he is relevant.